Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, we talked to Francesca Ferraro. Francesca was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2019, and she just had a colectomy in January of 2023. So we talked to her about her brand spanking new ostomy, and we talked to her about the pros and cons of reversing her ostomy surgery and continuing on with a J-pouch. We talked to her about the weighty decisions that she had to make at such a young age, and we talked to her about how her symptoms and diagnosis have caused certain anxiety and post-traumatic stress issues that she's currently dealing with. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. This is Robin. Welcome to Bowel Moments.
Hey, guys. This is Alicia, and we are so excited to be joined by Francesca Ferraro.
Hi.
Francesca, welcome to the show. We are just absolutely delighted that you wanted to come on and talk to us. It's always actually a little bit surprising that people actually want to talk to us.
Oh my gosh, no. I want to scream my story from the mountaintops. I feel like this has been such a wild ride, and I'm super excited to talk about it and share it with people. And if I can give comfort to one person, because so much of my suffering and isolation was unnecessary, then I will feel a lot better about everything.
Perfect. Well, we can guarantee that at least 10 people will hear you.
Yes.
Maybe not more than that. We're not sure yet. But we'll get your story out to those 10 people, and hopefully they'll share even more. But before we get into your story, what are you drinking?
This is a drink I'm super excited about. I'm drinking a pineapple White Claw from the newly released third flavor pack. If that inspires anyone else, then please follow me and DM me because you get it. I literally made my mom buy these at a random Walgreens on Long Island because I was like, oh my gosh, I need to try every flavor. So this is my first time trying it.
Oh,
yeah, that's
very
what it is.
Exciting. What else is in the flavor pack? Does it come with, I'm assuming there's other flavors.
Yeah, there's a blackberry one. Those are the only two that really stick out to me because they really just sounded like they would hit the spot. Those are the flavors that got me.
Fascinated by how much you know about White Claw flavor packs, and it
really
makes me want to text my daughters to see if they know that much about White Claw flavor packs. I feel like I should text them right now.
I also feel at some point we need to get you on here, and we need to get Matt on here, and we'll have a White Claw versus High Noon battle.
Yeah. Okay, yes. High Noon probably wins.
Really?
I hate, I love a High Noon. They're just harder to find. But White Claws are the OG, so they kind of, there's the nostalgia factor,
I feel like Zima was the old OG.
I was about to say, yeah. But that was way before your time.
Before you were born. Yeah, exactly.
That's from the 90s. It's from when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah, and when it wasn't very good, and you had to put Jolly Ranchers in there to try to give it any sort of flavor other than weird. So,
so a Bud Light seltzer?
I don't know. I've never had one of those.
Oh my gosh, they're abhorrent. Never try it.
Okay, fair.
We won't.
I have had a White Claw at the baseball game here, and it was good. I enjoyed it, but it was also this big. It was
it was a tall
absolutely. Boy. It was, but it's also it was tall, but also enormous. And I'm who am I sharing this with? But I drank it all myself.
Me, myself, and I. Yeah, it's a self-care moment.
I was this feels like a challenge. I'm in.
Challenge accepted.
It was pink lemonade, I think, or strawberry lemonade. It was really good.
That sounds very good.
I know, right?
It does sound good.
Yeah.
Robin, what are you drinking?
I am slightly under the weather today, guys. And so I'm just drinking water right now. And I have this lovely bottle of champagne in my refrigerator waiting for me to drink it. So hopefully on our next interview, I'll be feeling better. But I'm a little congested. I'm sounding a little phone sex operator today.
'Tis the season.
Too bad I don't title our shows differently. Because that could be fun.
What about you, Alicia? What are you drinking?
I am double fisting today with a red blend from Portugal that my neighbor gave me. And then also a Topo Chico, just because, again, hydration is important.
So true.
This is not about all of the various alcohols that we've just discussed. So, Francesca, tell us your IBD story. What brought you into our community?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 19 years old, literally developed my symptoms overnight. It was crazy. So looking back on it, obviously my immune system didn't decide to just betray me overnight. It must have been sort of degenerating over time. And it's weird to think about all the things that sort of happened in the 6 months leading up to my symptom manifestation and sort of wondering, I don't know, I guess when things went wrong and my life totally changed. So yeah, I had recently transferred to a new school, I was in the middle of something of an identity crisis because I have a background in music actually. And I had left my music school and I had sort of abandoned my music ambitions altogether. I started to study philosophy. That's how you know I was really in crisis. And I basically transferred. This is, and I'm going to include what seems like an irrelevant detail, but I will explain why it's relevant later. Started going out with a guy that was like just fine. He was like just okay. Did not inspire anything in me. We went out for like 4 weeks. He was being super wishy-washy. I confronted him. I was like, hey, you need to tell me what's going on because like if you don't want to go out with me, that's fine, but you need to tell me because you're being weird. So he cut things off. He was like, oh, I'm not ready, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. I don't really care. But he didn't want to burn bridges, quote unquote. So we reconvene for lunch at this like really old style Italian restaurant on Arthur Ave because I was going to Fordham in the Bronx. I had like spaghetti with garlic and oil, which my mom makes all the time because I'm also, I'm Italian American. I grew up with eating a lot of Italian food, whatever. And then I experienced like the weirdest GI symptoms ever for the rest of the day. Nothing like you see, but like things were just not quite right. So I remember thinking like, that's weird. Like if garlic bothered me, I would definitely know at this point, like I've lived 19 years of my life eating a lot of garlic. I would know. So anyway, I thought maybe it was food poisoning. And then I invented this theory that it was because I was in so much emotional distress about this random guy that I met at like transfer orientation. Like literally why, but I literally did not care. It wasn't a big deal. But I was experiencing the weirdest GI symptoms of my life. So I really thought maybe there was like an emotional connection. Maybe I was more upset about this than I thought or than I had originally recognized. And then I started waking up in the middle of the night. So overnight, I woke up, my heart rate was like through the roof. I'm like soaked in sweat, like my pajamas were disgusting, running for my life to the communal bathroom because my life is a sick joke and I was a sophomore in the only sophomore dorm with a communal bathroom. It was not pretty. It was not fun. I was like a refugee in my stall. Like there were other girls like taking showers and stuff. I'm like, I'm not showing my face after what just went down. And that continued to happen, multiple times throughout the night for the rest of the week. And it started to impact, my day-to-day activities. I actually, at one point, I wasn't sure if it was like my period or if there was blood on my stool. I didn't want to say that there was blood on my stool because I knew that was a big deal. So I kind of left that detail out when I ultimately had to go to University Health Services because it very clearly was not food poisoning after about a day or two. She gave me saltines and electrolytes. She was like, there's probably a stomach bug going around. Like, don't worry about it. And then I think for me, I remember really getting nervous when no matter how little I ate or no matter what I ate, even if I went on like, the brat diet, because that's what my mom was telling me to do, I was still going to the bathroom like 10 times a day, So if I ate something, maybe it was 20, 25, but the symptoms were just totally crazy. And like I said, the biggest thing was urgency. Like, unlike anything I'd ever experienced, I very quickly became very scared to leave my apartment, to, not have any bathroom access. So dealt with a stupid PA who was not helpful, finally got to a GI. It was also not great, but at least I got a colonoscopy relatively quickly. And that basically confirmed the diagnosis. I was put into okay remission. It wasn't super stable, but I was able to basically move on for the most part. I didn't have like the anxiety about getting stuck at a red light or leaving my apartment or anything. The pandemic rolls around, And then, in retrospect, I like to think of that year as being a year when my UC was pretty much under control. Like I got 1 year out of remission out of my 3-year wild extravaganza. But the reason why I kind of second guess myself now is because, first of all, I remember that there were certain like mini flares. I kind of like try to ignore those if I can, to be honest, because it doesn't fit my agenda. But the biggest thing for me is that when I first met my boyfriend, who I'm still going out with, we've been together for almost 3 years, I told him like before we started dating, when we really had just met, he was like a half a step up from being a stranger. I told him that I had UC and basically gave him a pretty decent explanation of what it means. And it felt very important to me that he knew that before he got involved. I don't think I would have done that so early if I was really confident in the stability of my health. Not that I would have withheld that from him long term or anything, but like I told him we had probably known each other for 2 or 3 weeks. And I knew I really liked him. I thought he was really cute. And I didn't want to have to backpedal and like shit my pants on a date or something and have to do some like major explaining, because I knew that my body was capable of doing that. So that's why I feel like maybe my quote unquote remission wasn't really as reliable as I thought it was, especially when shit really hit the fan in January 2021. I started to flare, had to go on Entyvio, was still shitting my pants on Entyvio, went on Remicade, had the same issue, and then I got 4 bacterial infections, couldn't get off prednisone. And then I was switched to Rinvoq. I also got a second opinion at the Mayo Clinic from Dr. Kane, who is totally awesome. And then my condition continued to deteriorate. I was admitted to the emergency room at the recommendation of my doctor and her team at Mount Sinai. And it was decided like almost immediately that I needed to get surgery, and they didn't really present any other options to me. And here I am, a little bit over a month later, living the ileostomy life, and I truly have never felt better. It is awesome.
I wish that Robin and I weren't all on mute for most of that, because we were definitely laughing for a good chunk of that. And I, not at you, with you, I promise.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you're probably, Robin, is Francesca one of the first people that we know that like had to get more of an emergent surgery versus kind of like more of a planned surgery?
I don't know. We've had some pretty dramatic and traumatic stories shared on the show, but you are the first one. I mean, 1 month post surgery though. I mean, you're like baby ileostomy on the show.
She is brandy new. Yeah.
So when you went in and they basically are like, really not another option, how did they present that to you? Is it just literally like, this is the surgery that you're going to have and this is the timing of when we're going to have it?
Yeah. So, there was a GI team doing rounds. Unfortunately, they all knew me because I had already been hospitalized twice last year. The first time was for a flare, and the second time was for C. diff. I had to cut one of my vacations short over the summer, which was so just like annoying and kind of traumatic. So yeah, they did all know me, and they were like, "Oh, you're back.
Welcome back."
Yeah, basically. And they were like, we need to take it out. They were like, "Have you spoken to your doctor about surgery?" And I said, "Well, I've asked her about it. It's been on my mind before." And they said, we don't really think it's safe for you to continue experimenting basically with other medications.
Oh gosh. Okay. And I know because around about that time, I think we were introduced to you very close to the time when you were like just about to have your surgery. And you immediately, like once you knew you were going to have the surgery, the first thing you did was start an Instagram account for your basically ostomy journey. How did you decide to do that? Because this is a very public space. It puts it out there very publicly into the world. So why did you decide to do that? And then sort of how have you seen people respond to you with this?
Yeah, so the reason why I did that honestly was because and this is sort of like a key point, I guess, in my experience in my relationship with my surgery. I was okay with it maybe starting about 6 months ago. A year ago, I was crying myself to sleep with the prospect of having an ostomy or getting a J pouch or really having any sort of surgical intervention for my UC. That was when I was really beginning to appreciate the severity of it. Because when I first started to flare about 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago at this point, I didn't even know flare could last that long. And for a while, I was kind of in denial about it. I was not open about my UC at all with anyone. Told my mom, don't even tell my family. Like, it really weighed very, very heavily on me for a very long time. So, something kind of changed that summer following my second hospitalization, where it was like a beacon of hope for me. And it felt like maybe this is going to provide me with the stability that I need to finally look forward to things in my life that I've always wanted. Like, I've always wanted to be a professional. I've always wanted to get married and have kids one day. I've always wanted to travel. I had gotten to a point in my UC, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, where I couldn't make plans for that weekend. I might feel good right now. I don't know how I'm going to feel in 3 days. Like it really was on kind of a case by case basis. So when my view of surgery changed and I finally came around to it, not only did I come around to it, but I kind of embraced it. And I was like, maybe this is what I need in my life. And then when it became personal, when it was happening, when I had been told that it's going to happen, I wanted to be a positive voice in the IBD community. And I felt ready to connect with it, because for a really long time, I didn't want anything to do with it. Like seriously could not get far enough away from it. I like remember telling my therapist, like, I don't want to like run a 5K and like bond with people over our bleeding assholes. Like I was so like mean and stupid about it for a while. And I like willfully isolated myself because I didn't want it to be true. I felt like I don't look sick, I don't seem sick, like this is not who I am.
Yeah.
And when I finally accepted it and I accepted that, I have to abandon perfection. Perfection is just not in the cards for me. I'm never going to have a GI system like everyone else's. It's just not really the hand I was dealt. So I can keep suffering with this medically refractory disease that is killing me, that is making it impossible for me to do anything or enjoy my early 20s. And who knows how long that's going to last and how much I'm going to lose because of that. Or this could be the beginning of the end for me. Like the list of things that I've lost because of my UC is already pretty extensive. I don't want to add to it. Frankly, I got to a point where surgery was the only option that really was guaranteed not to add to that list because it felt like a lot of these medications had kind of betrayed me or something. Like I was told there was a really good chance it would work when Vogue had like a 68% success rate of putting patients in remission after 2 years or something. It took me 3 weeks before things got so bad I had to get my colon out. Wasn't doing anything for me. So yeah, I wanted to be kind of a positive voice because I was okay with it. And even though I got my surgery under like semi-emergent circumstances, it didn't upset me or, destroy me. The psychological aspect of this has been a cakewalk compared to my IBD and what that did to my confidence and how I view myself. So honestly, in a lot of ways, it's been very healing. And I think that's kind of always been the case. I'm very happy that I went into the surgery with that mentality and I was very ready for it. So I wanted to show people what it looks like because it's scary. I know it's scary because I didn't see any accounts like that where it's documented from literally the very, very beginning throughout the whole journey, whatever that may look like. And also I didn't want to be like a negative Nancy about it because I'm not. I really think this is great. I'm not just saying that. I wouldn't have made this account if I was in like emotional turmoil. Like the reason why I did that was because I feel like so many people would, and even me, I'm guilty of this. They think of surgery as, like the worst case scenario. And I just wanted to show people, that's a very privileged thing to say, to be honest, if your disease isn't at that point. And that's great. I'm glad that you're somewhere where it works for you and you have a medication and a regimen that works for you and your disease. But if that's not the case, like there is so much needless suffering that can emerge from basically being in denial. And I guess I just wanted to sort of show the beauty of accepting this is a part of you, basically.
So you're very shortly in. When we're recording this, you're only like a month past your J-pouch surgery. What have you learned in this month? Because I feel like there's probably tons of changes and tons of things that you're getting used to. So if you were to talk to somebody who is about to get their J-pouch surgery tomorrow and they're about to do stage 1, which is getting, your first ostomy, what would you tell them that you've figured out?
I would tell them to give yourself grace and compassion. However long you think it's going to take, give it an extra few days. And it's better to be pleasantly surprised by how well you adjust than to be, kind of disappointed. Like this is a huge surgery. It's a huge physical adjustment. It's a huge psychological adjustment. There's a lot that happens in a very, very short period of time for you and for all of the people around you as well. So there's nothing wrong with giving yourself time, like especially when you've been dealing with a terrible disease. It's been like really impacting your life for months and months and months. When it's gotten to the point that you have to get this surgery, you can be very eager to like jump back into things, and sort of harp on the first opportunity that you feel well to, sort of start living life to the fullest again and eat things and enjoy them and like, drive around and do who knows what. Like for me, even now sitting at a red light is like one of my favorite activities because literally 6 months ago, that was something I couldn't do. And every day I wake up and I'm so grateful for all the things that I can do because of my ileostomy. But literally something as simple as like going to Trader Joe's and I can peruse the aisles and check out all the new seasonal products. And I don't constantly have like, one eyeball on the bathroom in the corner and like, I see like an old lady like hobble over there and I'm like, oh shit, I can't get in there now. And then I start panicking. Like I am just so free. My life is so much better now. So yeah, I would tell someone who's going into it, give yourself time. It's huge. It's also tempting to underestimate the magnitude of the surgery and the adjustment that you have coming your way. Take it slow. Do not necessarily trust your bodily cues, if that makes sense. And I think that's something you kind of get used to with IBD. It's especially true in the context of surgery because, after an intestinal surgery, your small intestine is swollen, assuming you've had your whole colon removed like I have. Your small intestines are swollen for like at least 6 weeks. So I started to feel like the bee's knees about 2 weeks after my surgery, to be honest with you. And I was not on any painkillers. I was on painkillers in the hospital for the first few days, but long term, I haven't needed them or anything. At first, there was a little bit of discomfort around the surgical wound and that sort of thing, but it dissipated really quickly. In my case, I've had a really, really positive experience as far as my physical recovery goes. But, whenever that milestone happens for you, don't trust it necessarily to mean that the healing process is over. Like, you still have a few weeks to go and you still have to take it easy, and don't jump right back into exercise or eating everything you want. Like I said, it's very freeing not to have the anxiety surrounding eating, for example, or, you can go to the gym and actually feel good and not worry about going to the bathroom or the drive there or something. But there's still a lot of healing that has to happen that you may not necessarily be sensitive to just because it's not visible necessarily.
I had my colon removed 20 years ago, and I still remember how good I felt after surgery, almost immediately, because I was so sick prior to surgery. So it was like 100% improvement, but I wasn't at 100% yet. So I always tell people it takes as long as it takes, and you're going to feel so much better after surgery, but don't believe it. Don't believe it.
It's so funny. Like, my mom visited me in the recovery room after my surgery, and I don't really remember this super well because I was absolutely drugged out on whatever magic the anesthesiology team had given me. But my mom came to visit me kind of like against the rules, but one of the nurses let her in because she wanted to say hi. And my parents were really kind of freaked out by all of this. My mom was like, they were very supportive, but it's just a lot to take in. It happened very fast. So she came in and this is what she says. I don't remember this, but she asked me how I was feeling and I started crying. And she was like, "Are you in pain?" And I said, "No, this is the first time I haven't been in pain in like 3 years." And seriously, I still feel that way. And even on my worst days of recovery from surgery, seriously, if you're suffering with IBD, that is so much worse. At the very least, as it's kind of a psychological game because when you get surgery, there's going to be a recovery period, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Whereas with IBD, you don't know the next time you're going to feel relief. You don't know if you ever will. And that cycle of, being optimistic that a new medication is going to work and then being disappointed is really, really draining. So yeah, I mean, whatever discomfort I experienced was sort of tempered by the fact that I knew it was temporary, but also genuinely it was not as bad as my IBD. And I say that very, very confidently. Robin, I'm sure you know what I mean. It's like my rock bottoms with IBD were like, I couldn't even stand up,
Well, then I fell in the trap of, well, I'm great because it's not as bad as it was.
Exactly.
So don't fall in this trap, everyone. Even when I started to show symptoms again, because I was originally diagnosed with UC, and when my colon was removed, right, you're supposed to no longer be symptomatic. So when I started experiencing symptoms again, I was like, oh, well, this is not that because it's not as bad as that was. So yeah, don't fall in the trap.
Yeah, that is true. You don't need to be at rock bottom for things to be
don't wait
really
again.
Not good.
That's right. Don't let your body do it to you twice.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that, like this sort of conundrum of when you have this and you feel you're at 40% and you feel so bad, when you get to 60%, it feels better. And so you're like, oh, okay, it's not that bad. But you forget that there is a
100%,
90%, 100% that you could be striving towards because you're just like, 40% was so terrible. So I think it's hard to remember that sometimes, especially if it's been 3 years of you not being in pain the entire time, all of a sudden 60% is great, so I think it's hard to not fall into that trap, I think.
Yeah, like when I was in college, I never thought about, I wonder how all the other 21-year-olds feel. You just don't think about it. You don't think about it. It gets to a point where this is how I feel. It is what it is. And, I have good days and bad days. And on my good days, I never compared myself or thought I could feel so much better. that was never ever anything that crossed my mind, even though in retrospect, that would have been a legitimate thing to ask myself. Totally. Like I was surrounded by a bunch of other very able-bodied, healthy, confident, very social people who really did not get it with everything that means. So instead of dwell on that, you just kind of adjust and like, it can't be that bad. And especially I think when you have an invisible illness and you have kind of two choices, which are you can constantly remind everyone that there's something wrong with you, which you don't necessarily want to do, or you can just drop it. Over time, it kind of starts to invalidate your disease in a weird way, because like all of my rock bottoms with IBD were totally in private. And I would never like announce that to anyone, not even the people that are like closest to me. I would never say anything because it's just like not something I want to necessarily share. I mean, it's terrible. The details of it are really horrendous. And especially, I think IBD is an interesting chronic disease because the symptoms are not necessarily unfamiliar to people who don't have it at a very surface level. So it's like, unless I go into disgusting graphic detail about what I'm experiencing and paint you a very vivid picture, it doesn't really sound that bad. So that was like a constant conundrum that I faced, because first, it doesn't really necessarily seem like there's anything wrong with me. Even if I'm running to the bathroom like a crazy person, like over time, you kind of get good at doing that and not making a terrible spectacle in public. And then on top of that, I mean, there's so many moving parts, I think, when you have a disease like that, and it's just weird. That's the best way to put it, I feel like.
Well, and with the running to the bathroom, you might have one or two people that notice that you're going to the bathroom more often than other people, but I feel like that's not generally something that people notice.
Well, and I'm sure you get good at hiding it too.
Yeah.
You don't want people to notice. And so you're like, I'm just going to leave my grocery cart here and disappear.
Right. And I've said this on the show before. I definitely don't want to dwell on when I'm not feeling good. I don't want to reinforce that by talking about it. I don't want to I don't want to say it out loud so that my brain hears it again. I'm already feeling it, so I don't want to reinforce it.
But it is interesting you say that though, Francesca, because like Robin and I knew each other when she was getting super, super sick. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea how bad things were until she was getting surgery and all of a sudden she's leaving for medical leave. Or I finally realized she'd been eating, 4 foods for a year. And then she finally admitted that, but she never missed meetings. She was always present. Any of the times that we were interacting with each other, like she looked like she was 100% because Robin's really good at that. So, and frankly, the more people we meet with IBD, the more I see this, and everybody is there like, you're going to make it work.
Yeah, you really do get used to it. Like one of my proudest achievements, and the only reason why I bring it up is just because, I mean, first of all, it was really only possible with the pandemic and having online classes. Like if I couldn't take class on the toilet, I would not have been able to graduate on time. But also just like in a very subtle way, it was the product of my IBD. I was able to graduate in the top 10% of my class at Fordham. I worked my butt off. However, the flip side of that is that the reason why I had the opportunity to spend so much time with my work and to, read the pre-Socratics or, Aristotle for the 10th time is because I had no social life, because I couldn't go out. Even if I wanted to go out, it absolutely wasn't a possibility for me. So I kind of took the approach, like, I might as well have this serve me in whatever way I can. So if that means, working on my essays and rereading the material and getting ahead in my courses and, doing whatever I need to do to really, just like devote myself fully to my studies, then at least it's not totally lost time. Because I didn't want to sit around and feel bad for myself while everyone else is like having fun going to the bars and enjoying their senior year. Because that was when all the bars had opened up after the pandemic. Like I made a lot of my friends during my junior year when everything was closed. So we were in apartments with at least 1, usually 2 bathrooms. And even when I was symptomatic and I had started to flare, it was never really an issue because we were just like sitting in a circle. We would order food, we would watch a movie. And then that totally stopped when my senior year rolled around. So that was when I was like, you know what, I might as well just work, whatever that means, I might as well just keep going. And that's, I can't say confidently that I would have performed as well as I did if I wasn't literally like homebound, but that's kind of the situation I was in, and I tried to make the best of it. So
yeah, I was going to say, it does feel like you made the best of that situation and made it, work for you, but it is unfortunate that that was also the case.
yeah, it's weird. It's like a weird thing. Like I'm proud of it in some ways, but then at the same time, I also know it was only possible because of a lot of sacrifices that I didn't really choose to make,
Yeah. That is the shitty part.
Yeah.
One of the things that we started chatting about and that you wrote in your questionnaire back to us is that making lots of decisions, big decisions, very weighty decisions about your health and about your future. When you have IBD, you're having to do that fairly young and sometimes without a lot of information. I just finished editing one of our other episodes, and another guest is talking about, having to really like learn healthcare when she was your age, like when she was 19, trying to figure out the healthcare system because suddenly she's dropped way into the deep end of the pool on it. So talk to us a little bit about, making these big decisions. What did you weigh as you were making weighty decisions? Did your parents help you? That kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I can tell you right off the bat that my parents were not involved. I was diagnosed right when they don't have to be involved. I don't want them to be because I was 19. And I love them to death. They're the best. And they've been so supportive. They're also a little bit overbearing and really like to be super involved. And I didn't want to scare them. I also really wanted to be at school. Like I said, I had transferred. I had some difficulty making friends as a result of the transfer, as a result of my IBD. I felt like I'd be even more disconnected if I wound up having to commute or take my classes online. And I had a very strong feeling that if they knew about the extent of my disease and the severity of it, they would strongly encourage me to stay home. So I did kind of try to pull a fast one on them by managing all of my appointments and all of I was sort of in control when it came to my treatment and the conversations I was having with my doctors and stuff like that. For the most part, they knew what was going on, but I just, I was the main point of contact by a lot. As far as the decisions I was making, I mean, it starts really early when you have IBD. As long as, I would say if mesalamine does not work for you and you have to graduate to biologics, you immediately are faced with a very scary list of potential side effects, risks, complications, or, you can not take those risks by refusing the medication, and then you have unchecked inflammation in your colon, and who knows where that's going to lead you, especially if you're a very young person and the statistics about like colon cancer, like really scary things, start to skyrocket after 10, 20 years. I was 19. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. In 10, 20 years, like I'm not that old. I don't want to have colon cancer in my 20s or 30s. You've got to be kidding me. So, when I was first presented with Entyvio, that's like the safest. That's what they say. I think that's probably true, but because it's like gut specific, but it was still really intimidating. I didn't feel great about it going into it. I ultimately, I wasn't about to refuse it because I did not go to medical school. I don't think I really know what's best for me as far as the medications are concerned. I certainly trusted my doctor and all of that, and which I definitely recommend people do. I see a lot of looking for alternatives, and while that can be a great supplement to the regime that your doctor prescribes you, listen to your doctor and be open with your doctor and communicate with your doctor, but definitely trust them. IBD is not something you want to mess with on your own. So yeah, Entyvio was very, very intimidating because I was pretty young when I had to start it. And then I was switched to Remicade, which I felt a little bit better about, I guess, because it has a more fleshed out safety profile just because it's been on the market for longer and a lot of people have more long-term experiences with it. But that's really the problem. Remicade is really the only drug that's been on the market for long enough that you can find people who've been on it for 10, 15, 20 years and they've been able to have kids, or that they haven't had any like mysterious cancers or this or that. Like generally, as far as the adverse health events are concerned, I think Remicade is definitely a very safe medication, and that's confirmed just from experience. The other drugs that are on the market, you don't really have that luxury. So, I was on Rinvoq shortly before my surgery. I was also presented with Stelara as an option. I know there's Skyrizi. There are a few others, Xeljanz, which did have some health issues or some, scary complications. Rinvoq does too. It's tough to be, especially a really young person, when you feel like you haven't really done that much. And like everyone else is thinking about, like relationship drama or friend drama. I can't believe she said that. Or like, who am I inviting on my trip to the Bahamas? Or like all this fun stuff. And I'm like reading the pharmacology for these medications that I don't really feel like I have a choice to go on, but I also don't really want to go on them. like just feel like there's no good option because UC is capable of so much damage. And I don't think that can be understated. Like it is it's very, very dangerous. And I don't think you should refuse any treatment. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that the medical technology is quite there yet. I think there's still a long way to go in immunology with treating these autoimmune diseases as far as like how we treat them and how we determine what course of action to take and stuff. It's just a lot. And I'm in the same situation right now with my current, I have the ostomy. I'm debating whether I want to go forward with the J pouch. I kind of want to be done with weighing my options and, being worried that if I pick the wrong one, it's going to bite me in the ass in 10, 15, 20 years. So it can be really frustrating. It can feel very unfair sometimes.
One of the things you mentioned was in looking at this and trying to figure out sort of what is your next move, that you are contemplating just keeping your ostomy and not going to the next stage of the J pouch surgery. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I love my ostomy. I do not see it as a problem that needs to be solved. I don't know how unpopular of an opinion that is. I know reversals are overwhelmingly like more popular and probably more appealing, especially if you haven't gotten any of the surgeries and you don't know what it's like to have an ostomy. I remember when I was in the hospital, so many of the nurses, when they saw my ostomy, they were like, "You're going to get that reversed, right?" And I was always like, "Yeah, of course." And in retrospect, I kind of like reflect on that and I'm like, I don't know. I know why they said that. Like, what if I said no? But now that I have my ostomy, not only do I not hate it, but I absolutely am obsessed with it. My stomach's name is Claire. She is awesome. She has not betrayed me yet, unlike my colon, which was literally terrible at doing its job.
Toxic. That colon was toxic. It had to be kicked to the curb.
God. Literally the most toxic relationship ever. That is saying a lot. So yeah, my soma is amazing. And I'm just not really in any rush to get rid of her, especially given that there are some risks and complications that can pop up with the J pouch. And the way I feel is like, if I didn't like my stoma or I hated it, I know some people, they like pass out when they try to change the bag or they throw up or they just really struggle with it for whatever reason, which is totally valid. I mean, your mileage may vary, this is a very personal thing. But if that's your experience with it, or if that was my experience with it, I would feel a lot more willing to take that leap and to sort of experiment and say, if this doesn't work, I can always go back to the ostomy, but I need to know. I don't really feel that way for a few reasons. First one, to be totally honest, like I am a what if person, but I tend to be more of a what if negative person. Like, what if it doesn't fail, but I have to go back on Remicade or Entyvio or, I have to keep getting infusions? Or what if I have a lot of difficulty conceiving one day or something? And that's really far down the road for me, but I've always wanted to be a mom and having kids is not really a negotiable thing for me. And, I would be more open to the alternative solutions that have, great success rates, but nothing beats just not touching it and just not getting any of those surgeries at all. I would be more open, I think, to taking that risk if I really did not like my ostomy. There are a lot of things with the J pouch, and again, it depends on your feelings. And I certainly don't want to give the impression that I think the ostomy doesn't have its own laundry list of quirks. It's just a matter of what you think is more manageable and what you prefer, I guess. So, like, I didn't realize how much trauma I had surrounding going to the bathroom until I had my ostomy. And especially with urgency, like that is something I really, really struggled with. I had a lot of accidents. I had a lot of really embarrassing moments in public and around people that I did not want to be embarrassed around over the course of my experience with active UC. And it has been such a relief to know that it is physically impossible for that to happen to me ever again, because, it's just not going to happen because of the surgery that I got. I know that with the J pouch, for most people, the urgency is not a huge factor. Like it sort of kicks in after 15, 30 minutes, whatever. Eventually you got to go, right? But honestly, I'm really enjoying not having any at all. I love that my ostomy is like basically incontinent and I just have my little medical setup and that's it. I didn't expect that to be such a relief for me. But now that I have it, I'm like, I don't really know if I want to go through that again. So, never say never. I don't really know what the future holds. And I know they both have their pros and cons. But at the very least, I would like to represent to anyone who's listening that like having an ostomy is totally not tragic. And you might you might like it more than you think. It's really not that bad, especially if you've had IBD and you've gotten a front row seat to your GI system. So like you're familiar with stool samples, and basically anything surrounding poop, like you're over it. Like we've been there, done that. It's old news. Everyone does it. It's not a big deal. If you're okay with that and with getting a little up close and personal with that sort of thing, the ostomy is really not that bad. And not only is it not that bad, but it is so liberating, and you may actually actively like it, like I do. I say thank you to my ostomy every day. Seriously.
I feel like I might have an unpopular opinion here, but when I had my surgery in December of 2020, if I had gotten an end ileostomy instead of a loop, I might have kept it. But the loop was so,
I've
the
heard
loop
that.
was such an asshole that I was like, no, I cannot keep this thing. And when I switched surgeons, the second surgeon was like, well, we could always just let you keep that ostomy. And I was like, listen here, mister, if I keep this ostomy, you're giving me an end ostomy. I am not keeping this loop ileostomy forever. So the end ileostomy is the bomb.com. The loop ileostomy is like, just rude. It's just rude.
I've heard a lot of people say that, which is one of the reasons why, because I've also seen some other people online who go forward with the second surgery, but then don't necessarily get the takedown. And I'm like, stage 1 has been pretty awesome. I don't know, you guys. I don't know. And again, I think that the psychological aspect is really important. Like I said, I don't see my ostomy as a problem that needs to be solved. I'm not really in any rush to fix it or anything. I mean, I love the life that it's given me and all the things that it's made possible for me, with everything from going to the grocery store to, booking a flight to visit my boyfriend or something. Like things that I literally 6 weeks ago were totally not on my radar screen at all. So, especially after 3 years of total instability and trust issues with my body and whatever, it has been so refreshing to not have to deal with that. And, that has really sort of, I think, informed my relationship with my ostomy and made it a lot easier to accept.
Did your surgeon give you a timeline by which you need to make a decision on when you want the next step, if you want the next step?
Not necessarily. I mean, the thing with the J pouch is eventually, I do have to make a decision because, after a certain amount of time, your anal sphincter muscles really, really weaken when they're not actively used, and the rates of functional recovery after J pouch surgery really plummet. First of all, it takes a while. I could even get my J pouch surgery in 5-6 years, and it would maybe take a little bit longer. It would definitely take a little bit longer, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. But if I want to, keep the ostomy and then get a proctectomy in, 15 years, as long as there are no signs of dysplasia in my rectum or anything, I can keep it, So eventually I do need to make a decision about whether I want to proceed with a J pouch, just because functional recovery can be a concern, but it's really not rushed. And as far as the proctectomy is concerned, there's definitely a pretty long timeline for that, which is a relief, because there are a lot of things I want to do and I don't really want to go under the knife anytime soon. So
throughout this, you talked about the psychological implications of making choices, the psychological implications of living with that urgency that kind of is always there and in the back of your mind. You also mentioned to us that you were working with a therapist that specializes in inflammatory bowel disease. Talk to us a little bit about that and how she works with you and what makes it specific to inflammatory bowel disease.
So she works at the IBD clinic at Mount Sinai. Her name is Christina. She is a queen. I highly recommend her. She has changed my life. I think she actually technically specializes in chronic illnesses, but she works exclusively with Crohn's and colitis patients. So, she kind of has special expertise just by virtue of her experience. She just I think in my case, at least, what she really helped me with was appreciating the extent to which my IBD impacts my life. Because I did not really understand that, I don't think. I started meeting with her when I was 21, so about a year and a half ago. It was my fall semester of my senior year of college. And my doctor, my primary GI doctor at Mount Sinai, was like, I think you need to speak to the therapist here. So true. So we started meeting, and yeah, a lot of times I would complain about things that seem very mundane on the surface, but they were having an impact on me that was really disproportionate. I wasn't coping with them very well. I think probably most importantly, I really didn't talk about my IBD. I didn't think about it, or I tried not to think about it as much as I could. It was just like a weird thing that I had to deal with. And I particularly really struggled with my symptoms at night. So a lot of times I would have, 8 to 10 bowel movements per day. Easily 75, 80% of those were overnight. So during the day, like I didn't really seem that weird. I could get through my classes for the most part. I could get through, social events with basically no issue. Going out was more of a problem because if we were out until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, like that's not going to work for me because that's when things start moving. But as far as classes and clubs were concerned, I was basically in good shape. So it was really easy for me to hide my IBD from other people. That also meant in my 1 bathroom apartment that I really didn't have very many issues sharing it with 3 other people, which was nice. But like it was very easy to minimize my IBD because it was not only was it super private, but it also just like it's my symptoms would pop up at a relatively convenient time of day. I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it because it wasn't really convenient. I went months without getting a good night's sleep.
I was just about to say, you got 0 sleep.
I got 0 sleep. That is so
Zero
true. Yeah,
sleep.
like
Yes.
it was awful. Like,
Which is
but
sustainable only in your early 20s.
yeah, I have no idea. Like
That is true.
I mean, right now with my ostomy, I empty it once in the middle of the night and I am not in any pain or anything, so I just go right back to sleep. It is awesome. When I when I had my active UC, I would wake up at my worst every 15, 30 minutes. Like on the dot. Like if you check the
Yeah,
clock,
me too.
it was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like how does my body even know?
30 times a night. Easy.
Right?
30 times a
Yeah.
night before I had my surgery 20 years ago.
It was insane.
Yes.
And I mean, it was just I have no idea how I was able to work around that for as long as I did.
That's not sleeping. Like you are not ever going into like full active REM sleep. Wow.
No, never.
I'm tired with you guys even saying that. Like I just suddenly was like, I'm so exhausted just even thinking about that. Wow.
Yeah. So then on top of like the crazy symptoms and whatever, like the direct things that are related to IBD, like, the whole bleeding asshole thing, for example, there's also just the fact that you're not sleeping. Like, of course I'm cranky. Of course the dishes in the sink are going to like push me over the edge. Like there were so many very little manageable things that honestly made having like friendships with people that I lived with, for example, very difficult because not only did I feel like they didn't understand what I was going through because they were all able-bodied. I mean, actually, 2 of my roommates were in the military. My boyfriend is also in the military. They were all in ROTC. I met them through him. So they were always like deadlifting 200 pounds and like being a total badass. And I'm like sleeping like in the middle of the day, napping and like writing my little essays, trying to make myself feel better. Like I felt like such a deadbeat sometimes because of my IBD, thinking like I would be so cool if I didn't have this disease like actively working against me every day, and I kind of resented them for it because I was jealous. They could go out and do all these things and enjoy, being 22 and enjoy going to parties and being on a college campus and enjoying even like learning for the sake of learning because I'm a total dweeb. I was super into my major and I felt like my experience with it was a little bit suboptimized because I couldn't be as involved as I wanted to be. But also it really impacted my own self-esteem and how I saw myself and how comfortable I felt initiating relationships and maintaining them because I felt like, why would anyone want to hang out with me? I'm cranky. I have stuff to do. My butt hurts. Like literally, I might shit my pants when we're out. Like I don't.
The butt hurt things. I mean, once your butt hurts, that's it. Like you're going to be cranky. You are going to be cranky.
My butt hurts.
My butt hurts. Yes.
And like in a way that I'm sorry to say, like you just don't get it if you don't have IBD, like it's when sometimes like my friends would have or even people in my family sometimes will say, oh, like I had a really bad stomach ache. It made me think of you. I almost, my aunt told me this the other day. She goes, she's getting a massage. I almost told my massage therapist that I had to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, if you almost told her, if it was an option, it wasn't that bad. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like when you have IBD, if you're sitting there and you got to go, honestly, I might not even tell her. I might just fucking run away. Like I don't know. So
Oh my God.
yeah, it can be, it's such a weird disease, and especially when you're young. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to like talk to you guys. That's why I wanted to make an Instagram page, because it is so isolating and such a bizarre. I mean, I feel like I was on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride from beginning to end. And honestly, there is no end. Like there is truly, like, Sarge, no exit. There
There's
is
no end.
there is no exit.
No
I have
end.
IBD forever. It's just a matter of how much I'm gonna let it impact my life, basically.
And here you are looking at someone who's had it for 23 years. That's how old you are. My IBD is as old as you are.
I can't like.
How
I know that's
wild is
coming my
that?
way. I
That's
know
wild.
that's coming my way, but it's
Yeah.
crazy. That's like one of the weirdest parts of getting diagnosed, I feel like. When it's
Yeah.
like, what can I do? And they're like, maybe avoid red meat. And it's
Right.
really
Oh God.
like there's not really that much you can do. It's just kind of a part of who you are, like physically. Whether it becomes a part of who you are personally, I guess, is kind of different because you're always more than your IBD. But still,
But talking to you makes me realize I'm so grateful for how much things have changed, like treatment has changed, and just the thought process behind looking at quality of life and, quality of care. But then also like how much things haven't changed with just like that one comment, like, oh, avoid red meat. Stress doesn't cause this, diet has nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter what you eat. Like it's still like the wild, wild west out there with IBD care. Like if you're not in a center or if you're not seeing somebody that treats a lot of IBD, who knows what that doctor is going to say or believe, because I feel like, sometimes it's a wild, wild west.
yeah, well, listen, I mean, I have been so privileged and lucky, and I know that even my positive experience with surgery and my resounding endorsements of getting it, if that's you, like, I know that a large part of that is because I am, New York is very readily accessible to me. I live right outside the city. I grew up here. My whole family is here. So not only do I have access to an amazing system of world-class hospitals, but also my whole support system is here. Like it totally changes your relationship with your treatment and with your disease and everything. So I fully acknowledge all of that. But the reason why I provide that caveat is because even in my case, going to world-renowned doctors at some of the best hospitals in the world, getting everyone's opinion, I still find myself scratching my head thinking like, do any of you know what you're talking about? Like how much more research does there have to be done to really like, I don't know, get to a point where we feel like we can have a confident conversation about IBD without so many unknowns and without so many variables. So I mean, the fact that that's been my experience in an environment where I have really excellent access to really great healthcare, I cannot imagine what it's like when you take even a half a step down from that, like I'm that's something I've thought about. Same thing with getting surgery, with your treatments and everything, because in my experience, you hear so many different things and so many like weird theories and a lot of like shrugs and I don't knows, because that's just kind of the current state of immunology. And that's from people doing cutting edge research. So it's frustrating, definitely.
Well, and I think even our conversations with the doctor, it's frustrating for them because they know so much, but they know so little at the same time. They have their research that shows that certain things are probably okay for you or probably the way they should go. But even that is still a little bit up in the air and all of it is dictated by insurance. And I know it's frustrating for them as well to feel like they don't have the answers even at this point, even, and, with all of the things.
Francesca, this has been, first of all, fascinating because we haven't had somebody on that has so recently had surgery, and also enlightening. I guess we're at the point where I have to ask, what is the one thing you want the IBD community to know?
I want the IBD community to know, especially for my IBD kings and queens who are suffering with really severe disease and not sure, what they want to do. I'm going to give them a piece of advice that I heard from Dr. Kane at the Mayo Clinic, who is awesome. Highly recommend her. And it is, there is a life after this, and you can get off the medical merry-go-round. If you are looking for a sign, this is it. You think of your surgery, if you have to get it, as an act of self-care. If that's how you approach it, it will be better for you. It'll be better like you psychologically, it'll be better for your body. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think a lot of the language surrounding getting surgery, especially from GIs, they can be very hesitant to bring it up. A lot of times it is openly viewed as sort of a last case option, a worst case scenario. I am not a worst case scenario. The life that I'm living right now, the fact that it happens to be one that I'm navigating with an ostomy bag is not in any way tragic or sad or upsetting. It is awesome, seriously. And, like I said, I have been very, very lucky to have great surgeons and to have had just overall a pretty great experience with the medical community as far as my IBD goes, or as great as it can be, I guess, in a situation like this. But really, I just feel so strongly about that because for so long I was so scared and I was prepared to resist surgery by all means necessary for as long as possible. And it was literally killing me. And I had my surgeon say that to me after when I saw them after my operation. So, don't inflict any needless suffering upon yourself. Your body is already working against you in a way that, very likely most people around you are not experiencing. There's nothing wrong with attaching a degree of weight to that and acknowledging that it is serious. If someone asks if it's serious, the answer is yes, it is. It is having an impact on your mood, on your ability to do certain things. And that's okay. That's something that you can forgive yourself for. And sometimes moving forward involves a decision that may seem really dramatic and scary and intimidating, but I promise that the life on the other side is certainly a cakewalk compared to IBD. It's easy to forget what a warrior you are and how much strength you have in navigating a disease like IBD, but it absolutely prepares you for the trials and tribulations that you may experience, whether that's getting a J pouch or just an ostomy or something. So yeah, that would definitely be something I would encourage people to keep in mind.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show, for wanting to talk to us and share your story so recently after your surgery. And thank you, everyone who's listening. We're going to wrap it up and say cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey, this is Francesca. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it with your friends.